In this episode of Death by Bunjie, you are going to find out what Bunjie and I did wrong and what Bunjie and I did right in our first successful bear hunt. This is the shot analysis video for our first bear hunt, our first successful bear hunt, Bunjie's first bear. If you haven't seen the original video, the actual story video, go watch that. It was a great story, had a great time putting that together, had a great time sharing it with you, and I hope you'll take the time to watch that video. This video is a shot analysis video looking at what we did right, what we did wrong as far as that shot was concerned. I want to start real quick, though, by talking about why I took Bunjie on this hunt with me. I've gotten that question quite a bit. It's a good question. It really is. I spent much of 2021 looking for a new crossbow. Finally chose a successor to Bunjie. The successor to Bunjie is Bunjie the Third, the Scorpid Deathstalker 420. Why didn't I take that beautiful reverse draw, reverse limb crossbow to Maine with me to hunt black bears? The guy that I had been dealing with in Maine was promising me 15, 20-yard shots. That is custom made for an older, slower crossbow like Bunjie, and I felt confident that given the right opportunity, we could get it done. Also this year, you might recall, we had a limb breakage on one of our other crossbows, Bunjie Jr., Genevieve's crossbow. On her crossbow, the limb broke the day before we went to the third ever Death by Bunjie meet and greet. So I'm a little nervous on the whole limb issue, right? I'm a little nervous on crossbows breaking down on the eve of a hunt. The Scorpid Deathstalker 420 is a tried, true, and tested model of crossbow, been around for a long time, but it hasn't been in my hands for an awful long time. And the original Bunjie, I'm going on my 12th hunting season with that crossbow. I think that crossbow's earned my confidence as far as this hunt was concerned. I want to talk a little bit about the Aero Rig that I chose for this hunt as well, because it kind of is part of the story. It's also part of the shot analysis, okay? This is a Maine Hunter Doom arrow. You probably haven't heard of those, except for here on Death by Bunjie. A friend of Bunjie years ago gave me a dozen of these. They're a Russian-made arrow. I really, really like them. The whole outfit here with a 150 grain Swhacker broadhead weighs about 506 grains, a little over 500 grains. It's perfect on an older, slower crossbow like the original Bunjie. The OB shoots around 275, 270 feet per second or so with one of these bad boys. According to friend of Bunjie Alex's translation from the Russian, Maine Hunter is a company that's been selling archery equipment in Russia since around 2013. Plus it has a bear in the logo. All right, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's look at the footage, shall we? We're going to load that up here. Look at this video. Now you have three different camera angles, and I want to look at each camera angle one after the other. The first one is this camera angle here, which has me seated in the tree stand, looking over the barrel. If you look sort of down to the bottom center of the screen there, you can see the barrel, the blue barrel set up there. It had already been knocked over by a bear in a previous night, so we knew that bears were using that bait. Pretty neat. Anytime you're hunting over bait, it is an ideal situation, in my opinion, for crossbow hunters because it's going to position your target animal in front of you. It's going to distract them from you and any potential movement you're making, maybe, sometimes, and it's going to give them something else to focus on right down there. They're going to come in that area, be sort of positioned down there. It does help present quartering away shots plenty of times because what they're doing is they're coming to that bait and they'll work their way around a bait pile. They'll work their way around that barrel. Hunting over bait is one of the priorities for the Death by Bunjie crossbow method. And I've mentioned before that there are a lot of different types of hunting over bait. I consider food plots just another way to hunt over bait legally here in Pennsylvania. Same thing with mock scrapes, things like that. Plenty of different ways to make that work. But here, this is one of the legal methods in Maine. It is one of the very commonplace and historical methods in Maine, and that's why we take advantage of that when we are in Maine. When you are in Maine, you do as Maine hunters do. So we got this barrel down here. We know where the shot's likely to take place. In fact, if you look, one of the things I'll tell you here that I really, really like about this is it is nice and thick. Look at all the foliage off to my right. That is actually a bank going uphill to my right. And there's a lot of mountain ash berries growing on there. These are these little red berries that are ripe that time of year in September. And the bears will eat those, birds will eat those, lots of animals eat those. But that is real thick going up in there, and it gets kind of even thicker as I looked up to my right. I don't have any footage of that, but nonetheless up in there, take my word for it, very, very thick. Bears like thick stuff, right? Down in front of us, we've got a nice shooting lane, and the bear is coming off the top to my right. Sure takes its sweet old time coming down that bank. Eventually gets down there. It's eating mountain ash berries on the way. And that's the thing about hunting over bait. There's no guarantees in this business, right? Hunting over bait doesn't guarantee you a bear, doesn't guarantee you a shot opportunity. There's so much other food out there in the woods this time of year. You're competing with that, right? It is a competition. But that bear, as you can see, that's a good angle right there. Now, I want to point out, if you look, there's a set of trees right in front of me. And in fact, if you look at the bottom, that ladder is strapped to those trees. Bunjie is a pretty good sized, older, slower crossbow. Those limbs out in front of me, I did have to lean back a little bit and make sure that those limbs weren't going to flex out and hit those trees in front of me. Now, the bear comes down to the right. You can see the shot take place here, and the bear runs off. We really don't see an awful lot of valuable stuff from this camera angle other than to give you an idea of the overall circumstances where the shot took place. And I'm just setting up tacticams when I got in here. I was so nervous about making sure that I was able to kill a bear on this hunt that when I actually didn't even take the DSLR with me to the tree stand that day. Didn't even take it out in the woods. One was because of the rain. It was raining on and off on this trip, and the DSLRs don't like the rain, right? Video cameras just in general don't like rain. But be that as it may, I also wanted to keep my gear to a minimum. I wanted less fidgeting. I didn't want anything to screw up an eventual potential opportunity on a black bear on these hunts. The less gear I had, the better. So it was very important to me not to have a lot of extraneous stuff. The next bear hunt I'm on, then I'll use some fancier equipment perhaps. But right now we're using the Tacticams, all run by a remote. One push of a button fired up all three Tacticams, all three camera angles. So here we go. If we look down across here, this is the second wide Tacticam. And this angle you can see as the bear's coming in here, you can see that thick foliage off to the right makes its way into that little clearing. The bear pauses right there on the edge of that. Now, I don't think the bear smelled me because the bear proceeded, right? But you can see, if you look close, watch this bear throw her head up and back and up and back. She is smelling. She's trying to figure out what's going on. So it's definitely something where she's trying to get scent for it, right? It's definitely something related to smells. She nonetheless comes in there, and these bears do get acclimated to the smell of a certain guide. If they had a different guide going in there every day, that might discourage some bear activity. But with the same guide going in and out, not a problem, right? She smells the same guide and will eventually associate that perhaps with a treat, right? The food. Smelling the lid, smelling the log, moving forward here, stops, and this is where the shot takes place. Kaboom! And we see the bear run off. I don't like that shot. I didn't like it. It was too far back. We all know now that it was too far back. This is what happened. Now, normally, you'd wait for that bear to go all the way around and stop at the other end of that barrel. We know that the bear is going to the food. But things can go wrong, right? Maybe the bear smells me seconds later. Maybe the bear smells another bear seconds later. Maybe coyotes come running through here or a moose. Anything could happen. And I generally don't like to wait on shots. I'm not one of those guys that lets the animal mill around for an awful long time and then I shoot it after I get a lot of video. I'm more about making sure that this gets done. So I like to take the first available shot that's a good shot. If you get a broadside shot on a bear that stopped, it can't get better than that, right? I mean, it's a broadside shot on a bear that stopped. So it can't get better. It can only get worse, right? The bear can move, go away, whatever, leave, not come back. In my mind, that bear had stopped. If you look at the bear's front feet, okay, we'll go on to the third camera angle here. If you look at that bear's front feet, you can see that that bear's front feet are together. That bear is stopped. That bear is not going anywhere. And for that reason, That tells me in my mind, this bear's done. This bear's going to stand here for just at least for a second or so, and I pull the trigger. As I send that message from my brain to my fingers, and as my fingers manage to pull that trigger back, in that split second that it takes for me to get all that done, the bear eases forward and pulls my shot 3 inches or 4 inches or 5, 6 inches back from where I was aiming. It's unfortunate, but it happens, right? That is essentially what went wrong here. This reminds me of another hunt that I was on. You probably remember the video where I was in Maryland. I lost a nice young buck one year over a corn pile. That buck came in, stopped, gave me the broadside shot, ready to take that shot. Kaboom, I take that shot as the buck was just easing forward. And the angle of that buck's body combined with that shot getting there a little bit later than I had imagined in my mind meant that that shot was back and a little bit low from what I wanted. And I never found that buck. Didn't even find any blood. And that's unfortunate. But that buck was not stopped, not completely stopped. Now, this bear stopped and started to ease forward, but again, very similar circumstances. That main hunter went through that bear. I did get a pass-through with that arrow. Can you believe it? As that bear's turning the corner, there isn't an awful lot of arrow sticking out of that bear. So heavier arrow, I think, made a good impression on that bear. I also think combining that with a wide cutting diameter, big old cutting distance broadhead like this guy, the Swahacker 3-inch, I think was a good idea. I really do like these broadheads. I'll be doing another video on them in the very near future. And I do think it made a big difference. People talk about Plan B arrows. Well, let's talk about Plan B broadheads, shall we? This is the Plan B broadhead. This broadhead is the broadhead that left a hole so big on the other side of that bear that, the guts were coming out as she's trying to escape. Death by Bunjie. You can't really move all that fast when what's supposed to be on the inside is on the outside. So even in a bad shot like this, that made a difference. Thank you for watching this episode of Death by Bunjie, and until next time, all hail Bunjie.